Learning outcomes. At the end of this lesson, learners will know how to set out and build the first course of a concrete block wall. Important terms to remember. The wall must be kept plumb, level, in range and check on gauge. First thing to do before starting to build a wall is to check the foundation for level. Having checked the foundation for level, the next thing to do is set up a line. When the line is in place, it is a good idea to dry bond the first course of blocks, leaving a 10mm space between each one. Why do we do this?
What we're going to do is the block wall, okay? And what we're going to do is the wall is 6 blocks long. We're going to 6 blocks right, pair at each end, okay? But to get the right length of the wall, what you're going to do first off is just dry bond it. Otherwise, we're going to with the brickwork, we're going to dry bond the wall. Set up your line. Maybe get your line about in around 3 or 4 inches down, 100 mil above the ground. Set the line up on 2 dead men. Okay? So the line set up on the 2 dead men. All you're using this line for at the moment is just to keep the blocks in line across this way. Okay? You're going to keep the blocks in line across this way, alright? So what you do then is to space the block. You start out with your first block here, and just make sure to fit the box rule in between it. That's going to control the size of your joint. Okay? So there's 10 mil there. Thanks, mate. Actually, there's a house someone calling you up the colleague. I heard someone calling you.
If any of the four fields are looking for a D031 off the corner, there's no in the door there.
D031? Yeah, alright. Okay, so you see there, just checking it out for the 10 mil in between them all. Okay, so box out this in between them. So the joint. You want to stand back, have a look at it. Make sure that your joints are happy with the size of your joints going along the wall. Once you've got that done, just take a small bit of mortar, slap it out on the ground, and it's going to mark the position of your first block. More, okay? So your first block is going to go back on into that position there. Okay? Same down this end. Small bit of mortar. Flatten it out. And just put the marks on the ground. Okay? That's the length of your wall there now. Now if you look at the plan of this job, just put up here. If you look at it there, it shows that there's 2 blocks on flat at either end. See that? The blocks on flat forming the pier. That's going to be where the strength of the wall is going to be increased as that appears, okay? Blocks on flat, okay?
First course. We are now ready to start building the wall. Starting at one end, spread a bed of mortar on the foundation, approximately 15 to 18mm thick, and lay the first block on top of this bed joint. As there's going to be a pier at each end, the block has to be laid on the flat with another block laid directly on top to bring it up to the height of 225mm.
A little bit heavier than you normally would. The reason being the blocks are only 100mm thick. And when you've got 2 blocks on, if you've got 2 blocks on flat, matching a block on edge, the block on edge is 225 at the bed joint 100. So if you've got 2 blocks on flat at 100 each, 12.5mm beds underneath it. Okay, just for the blocks on flat where you use it. Okay, you see there that I keep the mortar back from my mark so that I can still see the mark. As well as that, I still have this block in place here as well, so make sure I keep the 10mm joint from that. Okay, so take the block up. Put it into the mark. Make sure it's not snagging the line at all. Right, drop that into place there now. Just make sure I still have the 10mm joint there. What I'm going to do now is going to get me level with the pointer. Check it for level there. Don't check that for level that way. And just check it across. Okay. So now, once I've checked it for level both ways, I know the block is sitting level in itself. And when it's sitting level in itself, it should be sitting fairly plumb. Okay? Just check it back. Scrap. Just take it out. We're just going to check the height for there now. Yeah, it's about 112, 113 there, so we're going to have to lay the other block down directly on top of this, okay? So again, just take a full trowel of mortar, spread it right out to the edge. And then when you put this in place, just hold it on lots of corners. As you're putting it down, just line it up as much as you can with the block below, okay? Try to drop it down. We'll be happy enough with that there now. Taps in place, I'm going to check it for level. Okay. Check for level across. You go that way. You go that way. Now I'm going to check the gauge on it. Yeah, that's pretty good for the 225. Okay, so we're happy enough with that there now. Now I have to check it for plumb. Pretty good. That's what I'm saying, to how important it is. If you're laying the blocks and you have them level within themselves, there's a good chance they should be pretty good for plumb then as well. So just check along this face as well. That's pretty good, that's pretty good. Okay, so let's start blocking in.
First course. Ensure the blocks are perfectly level and plumb. What is meant by the term plumb? This process is repeated at the other end. When the blocks have been set up at each end and checked for range, the line can be used to lay in the other blocks.
Okay, so we've set out our block up, we've dry bonded it, we're happy with the length of the wall. So what we're looking on now is we set these two blocks here, because this is the highest part of the floor. Whether it's the floor or the foundation, doesn't matter what it is, we start off at the highest point, we set our first two blocks there. So what we have to do now is we have to transfer the end of the wall. As you can see, the length of the wall is longer than the length of the level. So what we're going to have to do, we're going to have to transfer the level from here to this block here, and then we're going to reverse the level and transfer the level further on down. Okay? Spread your mortar. As you're pointing up this 4 inch block. We still have the line in place here. Everything in range. But this is the line that everything in range. We're going to put this block in position and level it off there. A little bit of mortar onto that. Block here, just keeping it in range of the line. Checking that I have the 2 centimetre joint here to the side of it. So now I'm going to check the level. That's actually pretty good there. Check for the block within the level within itself. You see it's quite tight out, is that? Check it back there again. Pretty good. Clean off any excess mortar. Now I have to check the level. I check the block for plumb. Now that has level from here. Here, I'm gonna here again. Very good. I'm gonna mark the end of this block. I do have to do 2 blocks on the flat. Here. Just mark the end of this. These blocks have to be laid on the flat. It's important then to use a good trowel full of mortar. Lay the block in. Lay the block into the mark. Checking that it's in range with the line. And now I'm going to check the block for level within the square. So 40%. That's down there. Go across. Yeah. That's pretty good there now. Spread for the next block. Position the block there now. Position it as near to the other block as possible. Make sure it's lined up here and line the ball across the front. Then reverse it just in case if there's any difference in the level. This will allow for it.
If there's any inaccuracies in the level, if the level's not reading correctly?
Yeah, this will allow for it. Okay, so you can see here that this is slightly high. Looking at the block there, see this is the point here I have to hit. Happy with that? We're good for level. I'll check the block for level within itself. Pretty good there. There you go. What I'm going to do now is just go there. That's pretty good there now. Just check it once more for level. Nothing's moved. Pretty good there. So now we set up the 2 blocks. Level to the middle block and we transfer that level to the end block there. So now we know that these 2 blocks are dead level with the 2 blocks at the end. So all we have to do now is move our line up to this height and run these blocks in. Okay. Now we have the line set up, it's just a matter of running the blocks in and then you'll have your first course laid out.
Running in the first course. Using the trowel, a cross joint or perp or mortar is placed against the first block. The joint should be thick enough, roughly around 12 to 15 millimeters, to allow the mortar to squeeze out when the next block is laid against it.
You can even see there now, just come around here for a sec, you can see there's a difference in the size of the block, see there? There's a difference in the size of the block there, okay? But it's important to keep that angle going this way. So there's 2 blocks that are taking the same back. Totally different inside. You won't really notice that too much when you're putting the cross joint on it, okay? Just again when you put, okay, similar to the brick, just take out about as much mortar as you would use for bedding a brick, okay? And just get it, and again, just flip the trowel, stick the mortar to the trowel, and then just stick it onto the block. Block up. You see there, when I'm putting the block in, I'm looking at this edge and this edge here, because I know that they're plumb, so if I keep it near enough right with that, the block should be pretty okay to plumb. Pretty good for the line down now. Stop the top of the trowel. Don't fill in the joint. Don't. People tend to, you can often see people, bricklayers and all do it, they get a big trowel of mortar and just slap it at the joint to fill it in. The best bet, just a small amount. It's nice and neat, put it in. Because the thing about it is, once it's nice and clean and rubbed up well, it looks really, really well, it does. What I'm going to do now, just using the bolt level, I'm just going to put a little check on this, especially on the first course, because it's really, really important that the first course is sitting bang on level and bang on plumb. Just going to check that to see if it's sitting plumb. See that there? It's kind of needs to come out at the top, but the top is right with the line. So what I'll do is I'll just tap the bottom of it in slightly. Okay? There you go. It's not too bad there at all. It's pretty okay. That's good for the line. So I'm going to have to put two joints on this time because it's the last block going in. Not like the joint on this, you're just going to have to stick the joint on it. Stick the joint on it there. And then just get the block, ease it into place. Before you let the block go, you're just checking that it's going pretty well lined up with both of these blocks here. Right there. Take a small bit of mortar to fill the joint. I'm pretty confident that block should be fairly plumb because when I was putting it in, that one is a good, and I've already checked both of them for plumb, but just make sure. Check again. Not too bad at all there. Fine. You have that one in that far. Now just have this. Just be careful when you're putting the last block in that you don't go forcing it in, that you're going to push these. Okay? Again, put the two cross joints on it. Putting in, trying to maintain the joints. So like that as a guide. Clear off from under your feet, just a little bit of mortar to fill in the joints there. So that's the first course laid. So what I can do now is I can get my room back if I can find it. John, you want here somewhere?
Each block in the first course should be laid to the line using the block beside it as a guide, and then checked for plumb before moving on to the next block. This process is repeated for all of the blocks in the first course. When all the blocks have been laid on the first course, the perps can be jointed using the jointing bar. Depending on the weather, the joints will need to be rubbed with the jointing bar at regular intervals.
That's the part we're going to put in. See that? We're not going to try and run the flat, we're just going to put it at the corner of it into the joint, okay? What you can do is just... V joint. Or I forgot the bar joint.
Using the big length of stick there, you can make the block work look, you know, much straighter and plumber than it really is.
It didn't make my block work look straight. That's how good his sticks are. Once I've done that, I just want to do the bed joint now. Just for these blocks on flat.
It works especially well on the bed joint. Because quite often the blocks could be up and down a little bit, but if you use a long stick and you can V-joint the bed joint, run the stick along the bed joint, and it makes the block work look really straight. The only thing is, if you were doing it on work, the painter might have some problems trying to paint in, or if he was using a roller, he'd have to use a brush to get into the V-joints if he was painting the block work. But sure, you don't need to destroy Joe's lovely block work here, putting paint near it.
That's how it is, yeah. Sure, you could have painted beforehand to join them all up. We won't accept anything less than perfection this time, okay? Okay. So, as you can see there now, drugged up. This is a bit of a stick. Drug up the joint. So what we done was, we started off, dry bonded out the wall. Once we dry bonded out the wall, we set a couple of blocks down this end, okay? Once we had the block set at that end, we transferred the level to this block here. So then once we had these two level with each other, we reversed the level and transferred the level to here. So then we know that the blocks at either end were level with each other, okay? Then to the corners, to the edges, the arches of these blocks, and then we just ram it in. Anybody got any questions?